Hello and welcome to another edition of the Floss Boss. This is Dr. J, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most common questions I ever get, and that is, what is the difference between the silver fillings and the tooth-colored composite fillings, other than the obvious, of course, which is their color. So let's start with talking about the mercury fillings. They've been around forever. The FDA still says that they do not produce mercury at levels that are toxic or unhealthy for you, so we go with that. However, there are some advantages and disadvantages to these silver fillings. They are an amalgam, which is they are a compilation of several metals together, including mercury, and they are cheap, they are fast, they can usually be used to fix or restore a tooth that is big, like a bigger restoration for back teeth when you're chewing. They're very strong, they're very hard, and they last a long time. They do. So those are the advantages to it. They're cheap, they're quick, and they last a long time. The disadvantages to these silver fillings is that, well, they're unsightly. They are not attractive. The other disadvantage is they are very hard. They're much harder than enamel. And so when you chew on them, it's like sort of pounding on a gymnasium floor rather than on carpet. I mean, it's very, very hard. And very often that hardness can act as a wedge in the teeth and can separate it, sort of pry the cusps apart every time you chew. Now, this flexion in the tooth can lead to fracture lines and ultimately fractures. So most of the time when these things fail down the road, it's because the cusp of the tooth has broken off. That's what we see a lot of times. Someone will come in and that amalgam mercury filling looks just like it did, only the tooth has broken now, and now it becomes a crown. It grows up to be a crown. The other big disadvantage to these silver fillings is they don't seal or bond to the tooth at all. They just fill the hole. And that creates a micro gap where bacteria just love to get in, and they can cause recurrent decay up underneath these things. So 100% of the time, whenever we end up replacing these amalgam fillings, they have recurrent decay up underneath it, and they always grow up to be something bigger, like a root canal or a crown. And so long term, they can actually do some damage to the tooth. So just like other things, cheaper, quicker, may be good for the short term, but the long term choice maybe not be the best choice. Now let's talk about the composite fillings. Now we're just talking about fillings, okay? We're not talking about porcelain, which is used for onlays or crowns, just the fillings. And these tooth-colored fillings, they have a reputation of being more expensive, which they are usually, and they also don't last as long, which can be true, but it's sort of out of context. You have to really get specific when you talk about the length. I will say this, when a tooth-colored filling, which can be very beautiful, very natural looking, when they are placed appropriately, when they are used appropriately, they can look good and they can last a long, long time. It's when dentists, sometimes because they don't want to use the silver filling, or sometimes patients will even say, can't you just try to do a filling here instead of one of those silver fillings? Can't you just try to do a tooth-colored one? And then they end up stretching that composite over a cusp, or to use it in a bigger situation than what it was made for. When you ask too much of the material, that's when it can fail, and it can chip, and then you'll end up having to repair it. It won't last as long as an amalgam when it's not used in a more conservative fashion. So the other advantage to, one of the advantages to these tooth-colored fillings is that when they do break, they usually break or chip right on the top. They are sealed and bonded to the tooth, so that it's very unlikely to get recurrent decay underneath these things. So whenever they need to be repaired, they can usually be bonded or touched up right on the top, and then you're good to go, no problem. So they are kinder to the teeth. They don't wedge the teeth apart. And they can actually strengthen the teeth because of that bond that the filling has between enamel and dentin and the filling material. So they can be known to strengthen teeth. So they are a little more expensive. If they're used inappropriately or not conservatively, they may not last as long as the amalgam fillings. We are finding that insurance companies more and more are paying a very similar fee for these tooth-colored fillings than they do for the amalgam fillings. They used to not do that. They used to pay more for the Mercury ones. But anyway, if when you need to do something that is tooth-colored, that is too big for the composite resin fillings, you can always go into porcelain, which is magical. Used to be gold, still use gold sometimes, but a lot of porcelain, either onlays, partial crowns, or crowns are used now to look very natural and be able to bear the strength needed for a larger filling like the old amalgams used to do. Those are more expensive, but I'm going to make another video about gold crowns versus porcelain crowns another time. So there you have it, amalgams versus composites. You choose. A lot of dentists don't use the amalgams anymore. They're hard to find if you really want them, but we find most people don't want them. The demand of the consumer, the patient today, they want something tooth-colored but still healthy and that will last a long time, and that can be offered to them through composite resin fillings. All right, so this is Dr. J. Please don't forget to keep submitting questions through our Facebook or email or however you want to do that, and we will make some videos to answer your questions, okay? Have a great day.